Welcome to the Planet B podcast, where truth, transformation, and faith converge. Join us as we flip the script on ecological despair, guided by Dr. Sailesh Rao's vision for a compassionate, rewilded vegan world. Let's begin the journey to the greatest transformation in human history.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 28 of the Planet B podcast. And today we discuss the civilizational transformation. Dr. Rao, I think we are all very ready for this civilization transformation.
Yeah, civilization transformation is about changing everything we do altogether. It's sort of like a summary of what we need to do. Doesn't quite go into how we do it, but there are some indicators on how we can go about doing it. It really comes down to people wanting to be sincere about doing it initially.
Wonderful.
So I started off with Victor Hugo's quote, "There is nothing as powerful as an idea whose time has come." And knowing all the myths in the system and knowing how completely unsustainable it is, which is what the planetary boundary transgressions are telling us, we have the perfect opportunity to redesign everything based on axioms as opposed to myths. Because the difference between the two is that myths are things that we were sort of told is true. It's in the ether as if it's true, but in reality it's not true.
Right.
So it's falsehoods that they were put into our minds, okay, unconsciously. Axioms are truths that we hold consciously. They are testable. You can check that they're true or not. And if they're not true, change them. So you're consciously adopting certain principles, and then you're building everything based on those principles. And that's how you create the civilizational transformation. It's literally dropping the old programming. It's the old operating system, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then building something new on the correct axioms, which are verifiable. Okay, so that's why you do with the axioms. You should be able to verify them that they are true.
Right. And right at the beginning of chapter 28, you state, "The path forward to a bright future is narrow and hard, but our best chance for achieving it is when everyone feels like they belong in nature and on the same team called Homo Ahimsa."
Correct. We all have to be together to get it done. It's not something that can happen if we are constantly fighting with each other. I mean, we have to agree that our goal is to create a living environment, a civilization that's in alignment with nature, that can sustain itself going forward. So it's an opportunity to redesign everything based on what we know now to be true. And I also see every human being who adopts these axioms and starts changing their choices, their decisions to be in alignment with the axioms. Every such human being becomes a developer of this new civilization. So whereas in Planet A, you're just a consumer, you're just a passive recipient of what has already been designed for you. So it's a code, looks like an operating system that was already designed and you just were born into it, right? And now we are given the opportunity to redesign it based on axioms. So then every one of us becomes a programmer of this new civilization. So because every one of us, when we make our transformation individually, we are causing the system also to respond. And so then, people are going to say, well, why don't we make this normal? Right? So when you want to make this normal, then you have to figure out how to do that. Then you'll get into the 7 strategic actions that we need to do to change the civilization.
Wonderful. Yeah. In the beginning of this chapter 28, you call our current mission to transition to Planet B a global infrastructure upgrade project.
Yeah, it's an infrastructure and software upgrade project. It's both, right? Infrastructure meaning human infrastructure. The planet is fine. The planet's living support systems is the original hardware that we are working with, right? And we as humans build something on top of that. And that is now misaligned with the life support systems of the planet. And so now the human additions that we did, we have to upgrade that. Okay? That's the infrastructure
Right.
upgrade that we need to do. And then we have to upgrade our software, how we relate to each other, how we relate to animals, how we relate to life. And that's based on the Codes for a Healthy Earth, based on the axioms.
Right.
Right?
So let's go through those one by one. So the first infrastructure upgrade you talk about is that we need to begin with sustainability built into the education curriculum.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The first of the 7 strategic actions is education, education, education. Sustainability cannot be just a separate department. That
Right.
tells you that everything else is unsustainable, what they're teaching you.
So
Right?
true.
I mean, I'm talking to this chemical engineering institute here in Mumbai, and they're the ones who came up with all these hundreds of thousands of chemicals that the earth has never seen before. And the assumption when we started doing that is that the earth is so big, you couldn't possibly impact it. And now we know that we are impacting it and we are causing a lot of issues. Right? So, how do you now change the curriculum? Basically, you have to go back to every function that was solved or implemented with these novel entities, these novel chemicals, and then figure out how are you going to do that. First of all, is it necessary to do that? Right? And secondly, if it's necessary to do that, how would you do that in a way that does not introduce something novel into the environment? Okay, something that Earth knows what to do with, that becomes part of the soil again. So something more organic. So it's really a complete redesign of our infrastructure, right?
Talking a little bit more about the education, how do you view education would change as we transition into Planet B? So you mentioned some going into the engineering schools and helping them understand more of that, the systems infrastructure. And what are some other ways you would see education change?
I would say the purpose of education will change to you're educating people not to become laborers in an industrial machine, which is what we are educating today. We still have the same industrial education system. But you're educating people to understand the life support systems of the planet. And then they can figure out then how they want to contribute towards helping it and maintaining it and so on. By the time you get through high school, you need to understand every aspect of the life support systems of the planet.
Yeah.
That's the way I envision future education to be. Because that's basic stuff you need to know. Then you can specialize, how are we doing the infrastructure for humanity in a way that is least harmful to the planet? Right? How do we repair things as opposed to innovate on making newer and newer things?
Right.
How do we repair what we already have? Those are all the skills that we would have to teach.
How would education foster a sense of purpose in people? It's something we've talked about before, is find my why. Like,
right, yeah. I mean, I'm convinced that everyone who's here at this time has a gift that nature needs, that they can offer to help nature. And so knowing that, it's how do you help people find their gift, sing their song, so to speak. So I see the education system of the future on Planet B to be much more self-directed. So kids figure out what they want to do, as opposed to sending them to this exact same, assembly line,
Right.
where you're supposed to graduate according to your age. Some kids are slow, some kids are fast at learning these things. And some kids are good at learning art as opposed to math, So why are we forcing everybody to study these things, right? If you let it be more organic, then kids find their own way, what it is that interests them. And they are joyful doing it. I know that's what they did at Sadhana Forest for their 2 kids, the founders' 2 kids. So both the children basically didn't, they were playing in nature for the first 7, 8 years of their lives. And then suddenly they got interested in learning how to read and so on, and they picked it up very, very quickly.
Hmm. So once we kind of allow children to discover things at their own pace, actually they may learn faster, they may learn more, and they
Absolutely.
will definitely excel more into something that excites them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not that someone else is telling them you have to graduate, you have to go study this, you have to do that. No, it is they're self-motivated, they pick it up much, much faster than you drilling it into them.
When you say that, I just take a test. All of us, we dreaded tests in high school,
Right.
in college. I mean,
Mhm.
that doesn't seem like that's part of this new way.
Well, I did a course with T. Colin Campbell Foundation on plant-based nutrition, and I loved the way they structured it. It was basically all self-directed, and there was a tutor you could ask questions, and they would help you if you have any problems. But the way they structured it is that you don't proceed until you understood that portion, right? So the testing was to make sure that you got 100%.
Right.
So if you answered a question wrong, they would say, here, go learn this section again and come back. And then, take another test until you got 100%, which means everybody passed only when they knew.
That's wonderful.
Then there is no, the only pressure is you figure out how you're going to understand the subject, right? That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no comparison between people anymore. Everybody who went through it, got 100%.
That makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I love that kind of pedagogy.
That's wonderful. So that goes into we discussed kind of the first strategic action with education, education, education. Now the second strategic action is the self-transformation.
Right. All these actions go together. It's like the 7 dimensions of the transformation, right?
Yeah.
So the second one is you have to basically heal yourself. You have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you help others. And as a species, we have to heal our species before we heal the earth. You help people put on their own oxygen mask before you go help others, right? Help other animals and so on. So this is why self-transformation is so important. And this is why I urge the vegan community to eat healthy, to exercise, to do all the self-transformation that we talked about earlier, and become, convinced that you're part of this Planet B movement, that you are now going to become the thermostat species of the planet. So you have a purpose in life. Become vitally engaged guardians of animals and nature. So that self-transformation, that's the foundation on which all the others rest.
Right. And we talked about this a little bit throughout this podcast series, but when people are eating that healthy food, they're exercising, they're feeling good, it's like a magnet that people who maybe
Yeah,
aren't vegan yet, they're so interested in this way of life, and it brings people in just by the vibration that they're giving off.
correct. Yeah, the aura that surrounds you when you do things right. Because healthy always, people can tell that you're healthy.
Yeah,
Right?
it's so true. Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. So the third strategic action is the goals transformation.
Yeah. Because the system is defined by what are its goals. If the goal is to make money, in the old model, grow the economy, you're going to get what we're getting today. So the system, no matter what you do, will figure out how to get that same goal. So all changes within the old model will remain surface level changes. It will never address the root causes until you change the goal. The goals instantiate what kind of actions are going to be taken within that system. So it's very important to have valid goals. So in the new book that I'm writing now, I'm expanding on the paper that we talked about goal validity tests. how do you test whether a goal is valid or not? It needs to be aligned with the axioms, first and foremost, right?
Right.
So there has to be so we have an ethical test, a coherence test, a measurability test, and so on. So this way you have a formal way of verifying whether a goal is valid or not. And I show in using that goal number 8 is invalid. Economic growth is invalid.
Right.
Whereas goal number 18 is absolutely valid.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a formal way of showing how do you transform systems. Starting with axioms. So it's an axiomatic approach. I loved when I was a kid, I loved Euclidean geometry. Because Euclid just used a few axioms and he derived the entire geometry using those axioms.
Does this go back to your 4 foundational truths as well?
Correct, yeah. The 4 foundational truths were based on debunking the protein and debunking the calcium myth, and saying that human well-being comes from a sense of purpose, not economic growth. Okay.
Right.
And finally, that animal agriculture is the leading cause of ecological destruction on the planet.
Yeah.
And so those 4 are the truths that we established, saying, that I don't want to live in the mythical world anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the goals are like the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. What are we trying to achieve? The thriving of life above water, the life in water, the thriving of life in the air, and restoring biodiversity. These are all goals that we have. But anytime you articulate a goal, you have to check, is that goal valid? Because if it's an impossible goal, let's say economic growth, it's an impossible goal because you are living on a finite planet. You cannot have infinite economic growth on a finite planet. You cannot have
Right.
growth beyond the planetary boundaries, right? So once you know it's an impossible goal, you need to drop it. If you don't drop it, then your system is going to take you in the wrong direction.
Mm.
Okay? So it's just simple, basic systems engineering is what I'm
Right.
doing with that. So that's what the goals transformation is about. Identifying goals that are valid and being ruthless about dropping goals that are invalid. Because otherwise you'll never be sustainable.
Right. Right. Awesome. So let's go into the 4th of the 7 strategic actions, which is the socio-political transformation. That's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. How do we govern ourselves? How do we relate to each other? How to be community oriented as opposed to individualistic? How to collaborate and not compete? How to have a subsidiary type of decision-making process where you make sure that decisions are made at the lowest level possible, right? And no more wars, right? I'm saying the wars are all part of the old model. It's all about, I'm stronger and therefore I can do what I want. And then the other side says, well, are you sure you're stronger? Let's find out. That's what it's about. We have to figure out different ways of resolving differences as opposed to shows of strength.
Do you have like an example what socio-political system would look like on planet B?
Participatory governance. So there is, much more of deference given to indigenous wisdom. Okay. Why do we do that? Because indigenous means you have been there for a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Which means you understand that local conditions better than anyone else.
Right.
So how can you impose something from somewhere else and say, I know better, and you're going to do it this way, right? So centering more of the indigenous wisdom in decision-making processes. And that's why the subsidiarity approach, which is having decisions made at the lowest level possible, is the best.
Right.
Okay. Sometimes you have to take it to higher levels and figure out how to make decisions. And there again, I would say it has to be consensus based, and it cannot be that we lose sight of the objective. So everything is done towards that overall objective, the overall goals of stabilizing the life support systems of the planet and maintaining them and staying within the bounds. Our decision-making processes have to be measured against that. Are we accomplishing our objective? And if you find that you're not accomplishing your objective, we have to figure out what's wrong with the process and fix it. I mean, there are a lot of details that are missing in this. I basically said it's going to go from exclusivity to radical inclusion, from domination and control relating to partnership and respect relating. But you have to code it, in processes that are put in place, rather than just talking about what the end result will look like.
Do you think that this type of engineering would actually be very important in the political system, where if you're realizing you're moving in the wrong direction, to move it in the right direction?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that engineers bring is that we have to train ourselves to be in alignment with nature. Okay. So if you give us the right objectives, we can tell you how to get there. I'm not saying that, we know everything. We know how to get it all done right. But we know the process. When you see that you're not in alignment with nature, how do you debug it? How do you find the bug, and then how do you fix that? So you have to have a process in place to ensure that it doesn't lead to acrimony, because the project has to get done eventually.
Right.
So we have, we call them bugs in the design. And then we have processes for addressing bugs.
Yeah. Wonderful. So let's go into number 5 of the 7 strategic actions. This is another big one, the economic transformation.
Correct. Yeah. On planet A, the economy is paramount. To drive the economy, to grow the economy, we're willing to sacrifice everything. Yeah, we're willing to sacrifice the ecology. We're willing to sacrifice species. All kinds of sacrifices have been done already. And to me, that's desecrating life. On planet B, I'm saying the economy is a subsidiary of the ecology. It doesn't rule over the ecology.
Right. Yeah.
The economy is there to meet human needs, not to stoke human desires and meet and, basically manufacture the wants, turn the wants into manufactured needs, and then meet them, which is how you keep growing something, right? So instead, it has to be, the economy is there to meet the needs. If that involves having to, innovate, we'll figure this out. You have to go innovate. Okay. If you don't know how to do something that's essential, we will innovate. And it doesn't have to be that you'll innovate only when you're constantly trying to grow the economy.
Right.
Okay. So that's a false motivation for innovation.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll get into more of this definitely in the next chapter, which is the money game transformation. So
Correct,
the next of the 7 strategic actions is the ecological transformation.
Yeah. You begin by recognizing that all life is sacred. So the radical sacredness, and that our role is to restore the ecosystems and maintain them.
Yeah.
As opposed to extract from the ecosystems, as opposed to seeing everything as resources. So it's not commodification anymore. It's about radical sacredness. So it reverses the whole process, right? Because the economy, humans are now here to serve the animals, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So that's the ecological transformation that I'm talking about that needs to happen.
A big part of ClimateHealers is this rewilding initiative. So that would be a big aspect probably of this ecological transformation, is becoming the thermostat species, as we are intended to be, and then helping bring back nature through these rewilding efforts.
Right. Yeah. It's rewilding on the outside, and then the next step I talk about, number 7, is rewilding your insides. That's the spiritual transformation.
Yeah.
Is to return home to who we really are. It's like we are rounding the bases, right? If you use a baseball metaphor, we're rounding the bases. When you go vegan, you've only gotten to first base. So don't think you've gone home yet. And it's an infinite journey home. So getting to second base, third base, fourth base, it gets slower and slower as you're running towards home.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
But everyone is on this journey of rounding the bases. And we have to basically help people if they fall, help them get up and continue the race, because every one of us is on this now. So the further we all get, the healthier the planet becomes. So I see the planet's health, planetary health, is like a barometer of total human health. So it's the outside is reflected based on our insides.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Why is veganism, do you feel like, so key as part of this spiritual transformation?
Veganism it's the moral baseline, because it starts by saying animals are not objects. Veganism is a stance of non-exploitation. It doesn't even say we have to serve them, right? It's a basic stance of non-exploitation. To me, it's saying coming to a neutral place before you can go the other way, which is to serve them.
Right.
If you are constantly using them and exploiting them, how are you serving them? They're serving you. Yeah, they're being served to you on a platter.
Yeah.
So that's why I see veganism as the foundation. And it's possible now to be vegan everywhere in the world. Even Greenland has supermarkets. I noticed from the videos, right? So those supermarkets are getting goods from outside.
Yeah.
So our transportation technologies have enabled everyone, if they want to go vegan. It's not necessary to eat animals anymore or to use animals anymore. For every aspect of our lives, not just food. Once upon a time, you had to use animals because we moved out of Africa, went to every part of the world, and then we said, oh, I cannot be naked anymore. I have to wear something. It's too cold, right?
Yeah.
And that started this whole exploitation process. So now we don't have to do that anymore. That's the point of veganism. And
wonderful.
When you do that, then you can restore the planet. Okay. And we can ask questions like, do you really need to stay in those harsh locations anymore? If you say, I cannot do this without eating animals, so do you have to stay there? That's the question you need to ask.
Is there a final message or some words you'd like to share, Dr. Rao, as we close out this episode?
It may look daunting, but I assure you that every aspect of this, every one of the 7 steps are already being worked on. It's for all of us to undergo all 7 of these steps together.
Yeah, that's the greatest transformation in human history. I love going back to that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rao, and thank you to our audience today. Next up is another big topic with chapter 29, which is the money game transformation. So we hope everyone stays with us for our next episode. Thank you for joining us. Planet B signing out. Bye.
This has been a podcast from Planet B, where the heart isn't outsourced. If you haven't moved here yet, we thank you for visiting.
The house is burning, but we're still sitting in the glow. Phones charged, lights on, pretending we don't know. But the forest is silent, the river's running low, and the flame on our plates is the strongest fire we throw. Put out the fire, put out the fire. Echoes and rise, this is your hour. 7 boundaries broken, the earth pushed past the line. Climate, land, species, fresh water, chemicals, nutrients, oceans in decline. Not danger, disaster in real time. Put out the fire, ooh, put out the fire. Metafoodians rise, this is your power. And here in India, one truth stands the same. Milk is not just milk, dairy feeds the flame. Cows and methane, fields and forests turn to grain. Politics, culture, carbon, all wired to the same chain. Every cup of curd is heat in the air, every block of butter is a forest repair. It's not a small habit, it's a planetary affair. Put out the fire, put out the fire. Echoes and rise, this is our hour. Energy fixes half the hurt, Dr. Rao made that clear. But food fixes the other half, the half that's burning here. Change the plate, change the land, change the future's atmosphere. Put out the fire, put out the fire. Metafoodians unite, this is your choir. Every millet, every fruit, every sapseed, every bean is water on the wildfire of a world we've never seen. Every oil-free bite is a river turning clean. This is not perfection, it's direction. Not pressure, but protection. A week of choices can cool a generation. A company's courage can ignite a nation. Put out the fire, ooh, put out the fire.